The Love, Life, and Lose Weight podcast will teach you the art and science of changing your habits around food. If you know what to do, but can't figure out why you're just not doing it, this is the right podcast for you. I'm your host, Advanced Certified Weight and Life Coach, Heather Beardsley. I've helped hundreds of women just like you figure out how to think and eat like a normal eater, lose weight, and love life on the journey to goal weight and beyond. Hey, welcome to episode 3. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about what works and what doesn't for weight loss with just an introductory explanation of each. And this is important for you to learn right up front so that you get a working knowledge of why traditional strategies that we're taught for weight loss don't work and what does work so that you can start moving away from those habits of thinking of doing things that you think are helping you for weight loss that are actually really getting in your way. Once you can start to do this, you get out of the yo-yo dieting cycle, this endless circling the drain of gaining a few pounds and losing a few pounds, gaining a few pounds, and so on. It just keeps you frustrated and stuck and feeling really ineffective as a person who can do really amazing things and is super smart. And like, why can't you figure this out? So it starts with a basic knowledge about effective strategies and strategies that do not work for weight loss. So let's start with being overweight and needing to lose weight are really just two symptoms of a larger issue. The larger issue that we need to look at is why you gained weight in the first place, and then the strategies you use to not only stop gaining, but start losing. So I don't know about you, but something clicked for me at age 45, and I was just unwilling to do anything for a temporary result anymore. And that's what we're talking about. Of course, outside of the scope of my discussion, there are things that you can do to take weight off real quick. But I really want you to be conscious of whether or not those results are sustainable. It just doesn't make sense for you to be doing anything to lose weight that isn't something that you would be willing to do to keep that weight off for the rest of your life. And that's where your focus really needs to be to have a normal, healthy relationship with your food lifestyle. So we were taught to lose weight by eating less food and moving more. We know that exercise as the primary strategy for weight loss has a 99% failure rate. It just doesn't work. You can quickly eat so many more calories than you could ever work off in one day. And I think that's pretty well debunked. But most of us, I find most of my clients are still using exercise, movement, what have you, as a compensatory strategy for overeating. And I just want you to cut that out because exercise needs to be really in a positive mind frame as a choice of yours that makes you feel good. So this is your invitation if you were looking for one or a sign. This is it. If you're doing any kind of movement that you can't stand because you think it makes you lose weight, just stop it. That's kind of like the same idea of, well, I'll just keep smoking because I think it keeps me thin. It makes no sense at all. So move because you like it. Move because it helps you mentally. It helps you feel strong and flexible. It helps you live longer. It helps stave away chronic conditions and lowers blood sugar and gives you endorphins in your brain. But don't exercise because you think it helps you lose weight. It doesn't. The second thing that doesn't work is restricting calories or counting macros or using any kind of point system or outside system where it's a game where they try to get you to eat very little, and that works against what you actually want to eat. Okay, so let's talk specifically about calorie restriction. We know that if you restrict your calories long enough and low enough, you will lose weight initially. But if you look at how that story plays out long term, you'll see that eventually you stop losing weight. Your body isn't stupid. It's evolved over millions of years to survive despite a lack of food. And it does this by responding to chronic calorie restriction by decreasing how much it will burn the calories that you give it in response to that decrease in calories. And this is why we see in famine situations, most of us waste away. We just get slower and slower and slower in our metabolism. And then when you introduce more food, then you would start gaining weight again. The problem with calorie restriction that's chronic and severe is that studies show that dieters who lost 10% of their body weight due to restriction resulted in a reduction in their calorie burn by up to 500 calories a day for up to a year. And that is a study by Rosenbaum and from 2008. And this is also the same studies like this explain why real loser contestants tend not to have a reunion show, because many of them have regained their weight because of that significant calorie deficit diet that they put them on. So we're talking about a significant calorie restriction. I did this in the HCG diet. I mentioned this before, where I took in 500 calories for several months in a row. The lack of protein caused much of my hair to fall out and my sex hormones to crash, and I went into premature menopause at age 41. And so I lived that, and I can tell you that it's true, and it took me many years of healing my metabolism to get it chugging along and burning a typical amount of calories for somebody who's my height and weight. So it doesn't work physiologically in the body for a long-term strategy to drastically reduce calories. Now, that's not to say we don't need to reduce calories to lose weight. Of course, we need to take in a few, less calories than what we're eating now, but we need to do it in a sustainable way where the body doesn't feel like it's under duress or that you're in a famine, and then downregulate your metabolism. There's ways to do it that feel really sustainable and that don't leave you with overt hunger. So the saddest part about calorie restriction, like a case like mine, is that I was fastidious. I really wanted to lose weight. I was dedicated. I was willing to do whatever. That's why I ate 500 calories for several months. And when I started plateauing in my weight loss, I doubled down and I worked out even harder. And what happened was it still didn't budge. And what happened was after that is that I blamed myself. I really believed there was something wrong with me. I didn't even consider that my body was just trying to stay alive, keep me alive. And it was thinking in primal terms, and I was thinking in terms of what's wrong with me. And so we were not communicating. And that's why calorie restriction, because it's an outside authority telling you how much you should eat and restrict your calories, is never going to work. Because what it does from your own experience of thinking and being in your body is that it hijacks out your own physiological hunger and satiety signals. So calorie restriction is a game that's played outside of your own signals for hunger and your own signals for when you're eating, when you have had enough, and when you're satisfied. So we don't ever want to take away our own internal mechanism for knowing when to eat is when we have hunger, And when to stop eating is when we have a sense that we're like no longer hungry. And we want to go back to our bodies to give us that source of authority instead of outside programs. And so if you've ever felt like a failure because your calorie restriction didn't work, I just want you to know that this is an invitation to just drop all of that. It was never your fault. You probably tried harder than anybody, and it's not anything that you did wrong. You were just given an impossible exercise that worked against you to keep you stuck in the hamster wheel of calorie restriction. So, all right, no calorie restriction. We're going to use our stomach and our sense of satisfaction when we eat to tell us what, how often, and how much to eat. Okay, the next thing that doesn't work is believing in some version of virtuous eating where there's good food and bad food. And for any type of food plan you can think of, food program, even to big ideas of like what is ideal to eat, human beings just have a need to kind of make certain foods the bad guy and certain foods the good guy. And if you just eat the good things, this is the false narrative, that your weight will regulate. And this is something that will never work in your favor. Because if you're good with food, that also means that you're bad with food. So this is taking food, which is a neutral topic. Food is not inherently good or bad. And it puts a judgment on you as a person, a moral judgment on you for your choices. It just creates a sense of restriction, all or nothing thinking about food. It disorders our relationship, our thoughts about food. So, virtuous eating does not work for weight loss. Unless you have a medical condition like type 2 diabetes, where you probably really shouldn't be eating sugar, then you can lose weight eating any foods. If you think you only have to eat a certain food, like take away all carbs, for example, then you're going to feel restricted. You might initially like the idea or be intrigued and say, I could do that. That's a good way to lose weight. But eventually, you're going to come across probably your own desire to have some foods with carbohydrate in it. And you're going to eventually feel grabby and urgent, especially on those days when you're stressed out or things are happening to really put tension around your day. And that is going to deplete your willpower. And we never want to lose weight with willpower. We want to lose weight because we've deliberately chosen the things that we want to eat that are accessible and easy for us to eat in our day. That's what creates an easy relationship around food. And when we have an easy relationship around food, then we can make really good decisions about not eating it when we're not hungry and not eating it until we're so full that we're gaining weight. So no virtuous eating. We're going to reset. This is your invitation to reset your ideas about food. Just cast aside for now all of these ideas about good food and bad food. And I want you to start to get in touch with your true tastes and preferences around food, how you like to eat. What are the things that, if you could just wave a magic wand, that you would want to eat this week? If you don't even know what those are, you've got some work to do. That is your work. Food is designed to be pleasurable to human beings. There is no getting out of that. And we don't want to use food for pleasure, but we don't also want to deny food for pleasure either. Food is a part of living a human life. We need to eat. And because of that, we want to be able to combine our tastes and preferences for food with how we enjoy eating. And we don't want it to be the highlight reel of every day, but we do want it to be something that we think about as just a normal part of thinking about our days. Here's what's at stake. When we think virtuously around food, good food, bad food, right? The effect of that is that we end up judging our decisions and we feel restricted around what we can and can't eat, what we should and shouldn't eat, what we need to eat versus want to eat. And this puts a lot of tension on the human desire for food that we enjoy. And when we judge our own human nature, this creates a big tension that can build up, and it can build up into disordered eating and thinking and habits around food, including binging. Binging is the number one sign that you have a virtuous attitude toward food and toward how you eat. And we're just going to invite all of you to drop any judgments around how you're currently eating. And I want you to just be open to the fact that however you're currently eating right now, you can normalize your relationship around food. And it starts with dropping virtuous thinking about what you're eating and how you're eating. And just know that you can get to a place where you feel really good about your choices and you feel really good about your food. That is possible, and we will work on that as time goes by. So, okay, what else doesn't work for weight loss? I believe this is number 4. What doesn't work for weight loss is making decisions about what you're going to eat from in-the-moment thoughts and feelings around food. Oh, I feel like having this right now. Or I just want to go and have some ice cream because I had a shit day at work. Those are in-the-moment urges around food. And the problem with that is that the weight you have right now is a product or the end result of your current in-the-moment habits and thoughts around food. So if you want to change your weight, you're going to need to change your in-the-moment habits around food to do something different, right? And what we're doing, of course, is reducing the amount of food that we're eating, because it's not what you eat that makes you overweight. It's how often and how much you're eating. Because if you're eating when you're not hungry, you're eating too often. And if you're eating until you're full most of your meals, then you're overeating. And you have a fuel overflow situation happening. So you want to be able to, what does work, rather than eating from your in-the-moment thoughts and feelings around food, what does work is making decisions ahead of time around food. So this means an intention to eat in a certain way by making decisions about what you're going to do. And then, practicing meeting that moment and sticking with what you said you would do. That's how we change habits. Think about it. If you had any kind of habit whatsoever that you wanted to stop doing, you had to stop the habit around what you did with that substance. You had to approach it differently. You had to distract yourself. You had to make decisions about what you were going to do. It's no different than food. Okay, so let's talk about what does work. And I've alluded to some of these from the previous discussion about what doesn't work, but we're going to go over them. There's 4. There's more than 4, but we're going to go over 4 in this episode, the main 4. So what does work for weight loss that's sustainable? Well, what works is eating from your own body's physical signals for when and how much to eat. So these are signals from your physical stomach that you sense with your thoughts and perceptions of your hunger and your sense of fullness or satisfaction with food, which we call satiety. Those are called satiety signals. So you're not, instead of relying on calorie restriction or points or macros or something else, you're going to start really tuning in with your stomach and your own sense of hunger and satiety. Okay, number 2. What also works is what I just said before, making decisions ahead of time for what to eat. So, beginning of your day, you are going to look at your day. You're going to consider what that day means for you, where you're going to be, what's in your fridge, are you eating out, will you be out after work, will you need to make a decision about where to stop so that you don't let yourself get too hungry. How are you going to manage your inevitable 2 or 3 opportunities to feel physically hungry that day and meet that need, eating the food that you choose to eat, and eat it in a way that won't cause you to continue to gain weight or won't prevent you from losing weight. So that means not overeating it, right? So if we want to not overeat the food we plan, we've got to really plan to eat the food we want to eat. Okay. Number 3, what also works, what has to work, is that you've got to be willing to stop believing that overeating benefits you. So many of my clients have these limiting beliefs that get in the way of weight loss. Here's a few. Overeating is part of the fun at the holiday. It isn't a party unless I have 2 plates of food. I always overeat cheesecake. These thoughts are not facts. They're just stories that you're telling yourself about your justifications and your lifestyle that's been built around normalizing overeating. Overeating never benefits you, ever. What it does is it overloads your body with too much food to handle, which creates an overflow of fuel in your system, so to speak. That creates a burden on your body to try to handle that fuel. And what happens is it gets stuffed into your organs and your muscles as glucose and glycogen. And when those pockets of storage are full, your body will start creating new fat from that overflow of fuel in the form of overeating. And you will gain weight in the form of creating new fat from that. And that fat gets started to get stuffed, especially in the midline, in your torso. If you are sort of like losing your ability to handle that food overflow, you'll see that the extra fat will be in your midsection and also in your organs like your liver, and that's where fatty liver comes from. So this belief that like, oh, it's so great to stuff ourselves is really hosing your weight loss. I want you to start thinking about overeating the same way that you would think about smoking cigarettes. It's a health risk. It's not good for your body, and you might think that it's delightful to overeat, but that's where your work is going to be, is to start really questioning that. It's tempting to think that overeating, for example, cheesecake is a delightful thing, but that's probably only half the story, because the true physical experience of overeating is quite uncomfortable, and our perception of how we show up when we overeat is never really good. And so it's not something that benefits you emotionally, psychologically, or physiologically in your body. So knocking down this and debunking this belief in overeating is part of sustainable weight loss. It's kind of like when I stopped drinking, I thought to myself, I don't want to stop drinking and still want to have wine. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to take something that I used to think was so magical and take all the air out of that balloon. how can I do that? And I started telling myself, I started saying that like a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, which sounds super sexy and magical, was actually a glass of neurotoxin. Because that's the truth. That's what it is. All my ideas of what wine did for me, that it made me funnier and it was a social lubricant and it was a permission to relax, was just a bunch of thoughts that weren't even true. It was just a story that I had concocted to support my habit of overdrinking. So it's the same with overeating. You're going to need to change the narrative around overeating and be the cross-examiner who punches holes in that theory. And, that will develop over time as you start to lose weight, and you'll see the benefits of stopping overeating. And you can more think about those than the allure of any old ideas about overeating. Okay, so number 4, what also works is to develop your ability to calm your nervous system or feel negative emotions without eating over them as a solution for them. Because the truth is, the only thing that calms your nervous system is engaging with your parasympathetic nervous system and allowing your body to kind of re-regulate down. And the biggest way that we can do that is with our thoughts. What's kind of too bad is that we've been using our thoughts that food helps to access regulating our nervous system. And the problem with that is that it has negative consequences, which keeps you overweight and stuck in the weight loss cycle. Instead, I want you to engage in clean and effective ways of regulating your nervous system when you feel jacked up, anxious, or depressed, so that you can regulate yourself better in a way that doesn't have those negative consequences. And then the other way that we tend to turn to food is when we feel other emotions like stress, frustration, anger, overwhelm, all of those things, which happen all the time in modern life, on a daily basis even. And we want to be able to learn how to live this human life without feeling like we need to distract ourselves or resist those feelings by diving headfirst into a bowl of ice cream in front of the TV. We've got to have better regulating systems that don't have those negative side effects of weight gain. So that is my overview of what does and doesn't work for weight loss. I'm really glad that you joined me today. In the next episode of Worth the Wait, I'll talk to you about how to start building a food lifestyle that incorporates some of these strategies that do work for weight loss, and how to start bringing them into your day-to-day so you can start seeing results on the scale. Okay? Until then, stay focused. So long. Hey, if this episode resonated for you, then let's connect. Visit hbeardsley.com/subscribe. That's HBEARDSLEY.com/subscribe. And get on the list. You'll get a free gift, periodic coaching, plus advance notice of in-person events and workshops.